So what does the movie Kelly's Heroes have to do with today's video? Stay tuned and I'll tell you all about it. Hello everybody and welcome to Fat Guy Productions. I am Paul, coming to you as always from beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. And what does Kelly's Heroes have to do with a diecast build? Well, I'll tell you. But first, let me kind of take you back a little bit. When I was young, we went to go see one of the airport movies. With James Brolin, I think it was. And that was the main feature of a double feature. The other movie was Kelly's Heroes. Well, needless to say, Kelly's Heroes was the hit of the evening. It's a movie I loved then and have watched a couple zillion times and love to this day. And what it has to do with this video today is the Halftrack. Now, maybe it was that movie. I don't know where it came from, but I really have this kind of affinity for Halftracks. And, I've built Halftrack models. I just love them. And in fact, there's a really nice Halftrack model out right now. And I sure would like to get that and maybe build that for you. And maybe that'll happen. We'll see. But in trying to think of something new, fun, and exciting for you guys, I decided to do a Halftrack. Let's get to work. So, I've had a love of Halftracks ever since I first saw Kelly's Heroes as a boy. I don't know what it is. It's just something about that half tank, half truck thing that really captured my imagination. It was sort of like they blended two things into one, and I really dug it. One of these days, I'm going to have to do a model of a Halftrack, and there's some really good ones out right now. So if you want to see that, put it in the comments down below. But in the meantime, I'm going to scratch my Halftrack itch with the gun bucket of Hot Wheels Redline. For the most part, this casting begins the same way. It has to be taken apart, but this one's a little different in that it's kind of a pain. The interior doesn't go in or go out very easily. I managed to get it out without breaking it, and it's probably more me not knowing the right way to put it in or take it out, but I finally got this casting apart. I had to drill out the post, get the parts out of there. I had to pry the gun out of the interior, and so there was a lot of different steps that I'm used to, but we did finally get this casting apart. Now, the plastic guns, they were bent, but I had an idea. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to just get them positioned straight. So I just found something that would work. In this case, I've got a socket on the end of an extension, and I was able to kind of fit the guns around the base of that, and it held them in the exact right position. This was a bit of good luck on my part, but so I've got the guns in the right position, but that's not going to be enough. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this and I'm going to heat it up really good with a blow dryer. Get it nice and soft, being careful not to melt it. And as soon as I've got it really nice and hot and just really pliable, I'm going to blast it with an upside down can of compressed air to freeze it and lock it into place. And that worked out great. And so here you can see just how good the guns came out. They're nice and straight. They look fantastic. So I'm really, really happy about that. Now, let me just give you a little idea of what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to make this look a little more authentic than it did by Mattel. So I'm going to do some, advanced painting on it and just try and make it look more realistic. But I am struggling with one concept, and that's these front wheels. It's a Redline. And so technically I should be putting Redlines back on it. But part of me is saying, hey, you know, put some aftermarket wheels on here and really make this look like a Halftrack. Well, I decide that I'm going to go halfway with this. I'm going to make it look as much like a Halftrack as possible, but it's still getting fresh Redlines up front because, frankly, I just can't help myself. So put in the comments if you think this was a mistake, but that's the path I'm going to follow. I've only recently started showing you my Bissell vacuum cleaner. It's a little USB-powered rechargeable vacuum cleaner. It just sits on my desk. And boy, this thing has come in really handy for cleaning up little shavings and little parts and stuff. Just be careful you don't suck up something you need like I just almost did there. Okay, so not only am I going to stick with Redlines for the front wheels, I briefly thought about going with just the silver wheels, but nope, deep dish chrome front wheels. Can't help myself. I'm a little compulsive that way, so I'm going to dig through and get myself a couple of wheels, and in this case, I'm going to need some hubs. So I'm using the hot swap hubs from Brightvision. That way, I can use the existing axle and put everything back together. So I've decided the trick for me to put the hot swap hubs on is to get a really good bite on the back half of the hub with a pair of needle nose pliers. And you got to squeeze harder than you think you have to, because otherwise these things will move around and pop out and there'll be a headache. Then I hold the axle stiff with my thumb, and from the other side I just kind of push the little slot onto the axle until it's got a bite, and then I snap it on the rest of the way. So just get a really good grab of a hold of it, and then hold the axle so it doesn't spring away from you. Work that little groove onto the axle until it holds. Once it does, you let go of it with the pliers and then push it the rest of the way on with your finger. Click. There you go. Now, World War II armor was not going to the body shop for its paint jobs, okay? So pretty much after it was built, just every part of it was painted. And so that's what we're going to do. Everything is going to be painted in OD green. For all the plastic parts, I'm using the Tamiya OD green flat paint and a brush, and I'm just going to paint every part of all the plastic bits. That includes the lower section, which has the molded tracks, and the base, and the gun itself. Now, once the base is dry, I can come back with some flat black. I'm actually using a rubber black, and I'm going to paint in the tracks, okay? Now, you can go all different sorts of directions here. If you want to make this all weathered, you could do that, and you can make these look more metal. But mine's going to be a fairly clean build. You know, this is where I want to be. I don't want to get into too much weathering and stuff like that. So the lower part of the body is all going to be the OD, and then the track is going to be this flat rubber black. As a side note, you can't just paint the outside of the track. You're going to have to paint inside too, and that takes a little bit more of a steady hand. Just go slow, think about what you're doing, and you'll be fine. Now for the guns themselves, they're all OD green as well, except I'm going to paint the barrels gunmetal, and then I'm going to use that gunmetal to highlight a few of the little control handles and things like that on the guns, just to give it a little more detail, and that should look really, really nice. But what about the body, you say? Well, I'll tell you about the body. We're going to paint the inside of the body with the paintbrush, all right? Using the OD green, we're going to paint inside the body, the wheel wells, and all of those areas. We're going to airbrush the rest of it after we get it back together. So we're just hitting some of the areas that would prove to be difficult to paint later on. Okay, so with the interior and the bottom of the body all painted with the brush, I'm going to go ahead and put the plastic interior part back in, and it's a struggle, okay? I just don't understand how it's supposed to fit in there, and so I really had to work at this. I did get it in, and I didn't break it, and that was some kind of a miracle. But I got it back together, and I'm really happy about that. And now that I've got the interior back into the body, I can go over to the paint booth to finish this paint job. So by painting the interior part and underneath on the body in advance and all the inside parts, it's just making this part that much easier. So now I'm just using my airbrush and I'm laying down the flat olive drab paint, and then we can go ahead and set this aside to dry. Okay, so the paint is dry, and now it's time for some details. This casting has a lot of cool little things molded into it, like fuel cans and ropes and shovels and stuff like that. And so I'm going to paint all of those. And like on the fuel cans, what I'm going to do, they're still going to be olive drab, but they're going to be a different shade of olive drab. Just to add, it's going to be hard to notice. You got to kind of look at it and you go, oh. And that's just going to add some visual interest to the finished casting. Then I'll paint in all the shovels and the cables and everything else and make this thing look a little bit more detailed. So with all of the body detail painting, I can go ahead and put the base back onto this, and it's got its shiny new red lines up in front. Pretty simple. Just put it all back together and run the screw into the drilled out and tapped out post, and we've got a Halftrack again. And it's looking pretty cool, if I do say so myself. Last piece of the puzzle, putting the gun back in. And it's nice that it's got like a little hole in the middle of it, so you can kind of line it up and then just take a screwdriver, stick it in there, and pop it back in. And there you have it. The gun is back in, and the gun bucket is back together and looking fabulous, if I do say so myself. But it's got to have some decals. So I turned to my 560, and I printed out some stars and a serial number, and we're going to go ahead and get those on to the casting. Now, I'm not going to do a lot of weathering to this build. It's pretty much going to stay nice and clean, but I did kind of distress the stars in the artwork before I printed them on my i560. So I distressed those a little bit just to make sure that it had some authenticity to it. And then we just apply them like any other normal water slide decal. A little water on the hood, and then dampen up the decal, slide it off into place, and let it dry. If it needs it, which it will, especially on the back hatch, we'll put a little decal solvent on there to soften them up and get them to take the shape of the casting. All right, we're at the end of the road here. The decals brought a little bit of a different sheen, so I'm using this Ultra Matte, and I'm just going to spray the entire casting with the Ultra Matte. And yeah, I didn't want to pull the front wheels back off, so I just put a little tape over those, and I'm just going to kind of give this thing a dusting and bring it all down and make it flat and a little more cohesive, and then we can call this one done. All right, that's all there is to it. Let's go ahead and see what we've done. All right, there it is. The gun bucket, a Halftrack, and man, am I enjoying this. I think it came out fantastic. It looks so stinking good. And like I mentioned, there is a really amazing Halftrack model out right now by Trumpeter, I believe it is. Big. I mean, the finished model is like this big. It's massive. It's really super detailed. And I've been toying around with the idea of building it. What do you guys think? Put it in the comments down below. Anyhow, I love the gun bucket, and I hope you do too. I hope you also loved this video. If you did, please give it a giant thumbs up, click subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss one of my videos. As always, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I really do love to hear from you guys. Okay, that's going to do it. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I hope the rest of your day is just wonderful and exciting. Until next time, this is Paul from Fat Guy Productions saying, be good.